For 63 years, I built what I thought was an unshakable life. I raised 2 children, worked as a registered nurse for 35 years at Boston General Hospital, and alongside my husband Richard, accumulated enough to retire comfortably in our Cape Cod home overlooking the ocean. My name is Margaret, and what I'm about to tell you shattered everything I believed about motherhood, trust, and the lengths some people will go to for money. I had always been the picture of health. Richard used to joke that after decades of caring for patients, I'd developed an immune system like steel. But 3 years ago, at 60, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. It was manageable with insulin and careful diet, nothing that slowed me down. My daughter Jessica knew this, of course. She'd been there at every doctor's appointment, holding my hand, promising to help me navigate this new reality. I thought it was love. I was so terribly wrong. Jessica was 41, divorced, with no children. She'd always been ambitious, the kind of person who wore designer suits to family dinners and talked endlessly about her marketing consulting firm. Her brother Daniel, 2 years younger, took after his father. Steady, quiet, an environmental engineer who genuinely seemed content with his modest life. Jessica used to mock him for it. I should have paid more attention to that cruelty. The first sign came on a Tuesday morning in late September. I was arranging flowers in the kitchen when I heard Jessica in Richard's study upstairs. Her voice carried through the old heating vents, something about needing to know where we kept our financial documents. When I climbed the stairs, she startled, closing a drawer quickly. Too quickly. "Mom, you scared me," she said, pressing a hand to her chest in exaggerated surprise. "What are you looking for, sweetheart?" "Oh, just helping Dad organize his files. You know how he is with paperwork." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'd seen that look before on patients who were hiding their pain levels from me. Richard appeared in the doorway behind me, confused. "I didn't ask you to organize anything, Jess." The moment stretched uncomfortably. Jessica laughed, the sound brittle. "I was trying to surprise you." "Never mind." She brushed past us, her perfume too strong in the narrow hallway. That night, Richard mentioned that some statements from our investment account were out of place. Nothing missing, just disorganized, as if someone had gone through them. We both thought it was odd, but didn't press the issue. Jessica had been stressed lately. Her consulting firm, the one she'd remortgaged her condo to launch 3 years ago, wasn't doing as well as she'd projected. We'd already lent her $40,000, which she promised to repay once she secured a major client. We never asked for updates. She was our daughter. We trusted her. The next incident happened 2 weeks later. I was refilling my insulin pen in the bathroom when Jessica appeared in the doorway. I hadn't heard her come upstairs. She watched me with an intensity that made my hands falter. "Does that hurt?" she asked. "Not really. You get used to it. How much do you take?" 20 units with meals, 10 at bedtime." She nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the insulin pen. "And if you took more, like accidentally?" The question sent a chill through me, though I couldn't articulate why. That would be dangerous. Hypoglycemia can cause seizures, coma, even death if untreated. "But you keep track, right? You'd never make a mistake." "Never," I said firmly. She smiled then, but it was that same empty smile from the study. "Good. I worry about you, Mom." I told Richard about it that evening as we sat on our deck watching the sunset paint the ocean copper and gold. He frowned, setting down his wine glass. "That's a strange thing to ask," he said carefully. "Maybe she's just concerned." Maybe. But his tone suggested he didn't believe it either. Things escalated quickly after that. Jessica started visiting more often, always with some excuse. She'd come by to check on us, but I'd find her in odd places. Once in our bedroom, another time in the garage where Richard kept his tools and important papers in a locked filing cabinet. When I asked what she needed, she'd deflect, change the subject, or suddenly remember she had a call to make. Then one night, everything changed. It was 3 a.m. when I woke needing water. My mouth was dry, a common side effect of my medication. I padded downstairs in my robe, careful not to wake Richard. The house was dark except for a sliver of light under the guest room door. Jessica had asked to stay the night, claiming she was too tired to drive home after dinner. I was about to knock to see if she needed anything when I heard her voice through the door, low, intense, clearly on the phone. "No, Marcus. I can't wait another 6 months. The property taxes on this house alone are a gold mine. And the investment accounts? Over $2 million. Once she's gone, it all goes to probate, and I can contest the will. Daniel won't fight me. He's too passive. My blood turned to ice. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. It has to look natural, Jessica continued. That's why the insulin is perfect. Type 2 diabetics die from complications all the time. A little extra in her bedtime dose, she goes into hypoglycemic shock while sleeping, and by the time Dad finds her in the morning, it's too late. The medical examiner will rule it natural causes. She's diabetic. It tracks. I heard movement inside the room and forced myself to walk away as quietly as possible. Every step felt like wading through water. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be my daughter. The little girl I'd rocked to sleep, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose tears I'd dried. But it was real. I'd heard it with my own ears. Back in bed, Richard snored softly beside me, completely unaware that our daughter was planning to murder me. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, my mind racing. I could wake Richard, tell him everything, but would he believe me? Jessica was his princess. Always had been. And I had no proof, just an overheard phone call that I could have misunderstood. No. I needed evidence. Real, undeniable evidence. The plan came to me as sunlight began filtering through our curtains. If Jessica thought I was vulnerable, confused, easy to manipulate, she'd get bolder. She'd make mistakes, and I'd be watching. At breakfast, I let my hand shake as I poured coffee. I asked Richard the same question twice. Jessica watched me with barely concealed interest. "Mom, are you feeling okay?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. "I'm fine, dear. Just tired. I didn't sleep well." "Maybe you should see Dr. Morrison," Richard suggested, worry creasing his forehead. "I'm sure it's nothing," I said, making my voice just slightly uncertain. "What day is it again?" "Friday, Mom." "It's Friday." Jessica's eyes gleamed. "Are you sure you're taking your medications correctly?" I blinked at her, playing confused. "Of course I am, aren't I?" Over the next week, I became a woman slowly losing her grip on reality. At least, that's what I wanted Jessica to believe. I'd forget what I was saying mid-sentence. I'd call Richard by the wrong name. I left the stove on twice, deliberately, making sure Jessica was there to discover it and express her concern to Richard. Richard was terrified. I hated putting him through this, but I couldn't risk telling him. Not yet. He was too honest, too transparent. Jessica would see through him immediately. "We need to talk about your mother," Jessica told Richard one evening while I pretended to nap upstairs. I was actually sitting on the stairs, listening through the banister. "This isn't just fatigue. I think she might be developing dementia." "She's only 63, Richard protested weakly. "Early onset dementia is a thing, Dad. And with the diabetes, it could be vascular dementia. We need to get her evaluated. In the meantime, maybe I should move back home for a while. Help you keep an eye on her. Make sure she takes her medications properly." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. This was Jessica positioning herself to have access to me, to my insulin, to finish what she'd started planning. "That's very thoughtful of you, sweetheart," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what we'd do without you." I almost laughed at the bitter irony. Jessica moved back into her old room the next day. She brought 3 suitcases and an air of proprietary satisfaction that made my skin crawl. She insisted on managing my medications, setting up a chart, counting out my pills each morning. I went along with it, playing the grateful, slightly confused patient, but I never took what she gave me. I'd palm the pills, spit them into tissues later, and take my actual prescribed doses from the backup supply I'd hidden in the basement. For the insulin, I watched her like a hawk. Every time she helped me with my injections, I noted the dosage. And 3 nights after she moved in, I caught her. It was bedtime. Jessica had prepared my insulin pen the way she'd been doing for the past few nights. But as she handed it to me, I noticed the dial was set to 30 units instead of my prescribed 10. "Triple the dose." "This seems like a lot," I said, keeping my voice vague and uncertain. "Dr. Morrison adjusted your dosage, remember?" Jessica said smoothly. "You need more at night now." I hadn't seen Dr. Morrison in 2 weeks, and Jessica knew it. This was the moment. This was her attempting murder. I took the pen from her, made a show of confusion, and then deliberately injected it into the bathroom towel when she turned to get me water. The fabric absorbed the insulin. When she returned, I pretended I'd already done the injection, showing her the pen. "Good, Mom. That's good. Now let's get you into bed." She tucked me in like I was a child, and I saw something flicker across her face. Anticipation. She was expecting me to die tonight. She was expecting to wake up tomorrow to find me in a hypoglycemic coma, and she'd call 911, cry beautiful tears, and collect her inheritance. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. This woman, who I'd carried for 9 months, who I'd loved unconditionally for 41 years, was standing over me, waiting for me to die. After she left my room, I waited 15 minutes, then got up and took my actual dose of insulin from my hidden supply. Then I did something I'd been planning all week. I set up my phone on the nightstand, angled to record the room, hidden behind a stack of books. If Jessica came to check if I was dead, I'd have proof. She came at 4 in the morning. I heard the door creak open and forced myself to remain absolutely still, breathing slowly and deeply. Through barely opened eyes, I watched her approach the bed. She put 2 fingers against my neck, checking my pulse. Finding me alive, I saw her jaw tighten. Then she did something that confirmed everything. She pulled out her phone and took a photo of me lying there. Why would she do that unless she needed documentation of her failed attempt? She stared at me for a long moment, and I heard her mutter under her breath, "Tomorrow night. Higher dose." After she left, I lay there shaking. Not from fear anymore, but from fury, and from the grief of losing a daughter I'd never really known. The next morning, I called Daniel. Not from my phone, which Jessica might be monitoring, but from Richard's cell while he was in the shower and Jessica was downstairs making breakfast. "Mom? Is everything okay?" Daniel's voice was thick with sleep. It was 6 in the morning. "Daniel, I need you to come home today. Don't tell Jessica. Don't tell your father. Just come." "What's wrong?" "Everything," I whispered. "Just trust me, please." He arrived at noon, confused and worried. I'd sent Richard on an errand to the hardware store, giving us 45 minutes. Jessica had left for what she said was a client meeting, but was probably another consultation with her accomplice Marcus. In our basement, where I knew there were no security cameras or listening devices, I told Daniel everything. I showed him the video from last night, Jessica checking if I was dead. I showed him my hidden insulin supply, where I'd marked every dosage. I told him about the overheard phone call, about the tripled insulin dose. I watched my son's face drain of all color. "She's trying to kill you," he said flatly. "Yes. We need to call the police right now." "Not yet," I said. "I have video of her entering my room at 4 a.m., but that's not enough. I need her on record attempting to give me the overdose or confessing to Marcus. I need undeniable proof that will hold up in court." Daniel looked at me with new understanding. "You've been planning this. I'm a nurse, sweetheart. I've seen what happens when families make accusations without proof. It tears them apart, and the guilty party walks free. I won't let that happen. What do you need me to do?" I outlined my plan. Daniel would install several hidden cameras in my bedroom, the bathroom, and the hallway. Tiny ones, the kind used for home security. He'd also set up audio recording on my phone, running continuously. We'd catch Jessica either in the act or discussing her plans with Marcus. It took 3 days. 3 days of Jessica bringing me medications I didn't take, of insulin doses I faked, of playing the confused, declining patient while Richard looked on with increasing despair. I hated deceiving him, but I couldn't risk Jessica sensing something was wrong. On the 3rd night, everything came together. Jessica had been on edge all day. She'd spent an hour in her room on the phone, her voice rising and falling in frustration. At dinner, she barely touched her food. Richard asked if she was all right, and she snapped at him, then immediately apologized. "I'm sorry, Dad. Work stress. I'll be fine." But I knew better. I'd seen this behavior in patients before they broke down. Jessica was reaching her limit. That night, she came to my room at 9 p.m., earlier than usual, carrying my insulin pen and a glass of water. Daniel was positioned in the guest room across the hall, monitoring the camera feeds on his laptop. Richard was in his office, reviewing finances, oblivious to the trap we'd set. "Time for your medicine, Mom," Jessica said, her voice artificially bright. I watched as she prepared the pen, and this time, she didn't even try to hide it. She set the dosage to 50 units, 5 times my prescribed amount. This wasn't a murder attempt anymore. This was an execution. "That seems like so much," I said, using my confused voice. "Doctor's orders," Jessica said, but there was an edge to her tone now. Impatience. "Trust me." I reached for the pen, and she grabbed my wrist, hard enough to hurt. "Let me do it, Mom. You might make a mistake." This was it. This was the moment. Every camera was recording. My phone, hidden in my robe pocket, was capturing audio. Jessica was about to inject me with a lethal dose of insulin, and we had all the proof we needed. But I couldn't let her actually do it. "I don't think I trust you," I said clearly, in my normal voice, without any confusion at all. Jessica's eyes widened. "What?" I said. "I don't trust you. I haven't trusted you for 3 weeks now. Not since I heard you plotting my murder on the phone with Marcus." The color drained from her face. "Mom, you're confused. You're not making sense." "I'm making perfect sense." I stood up from the bed, my movements steady and strong. "I heard you. That night, at 3 a.m., you said my death would look natural. You said you'd contest the will, that Daniel wouldn't fight you. You've been trying to kill me, Jessica. Your own mother." "You're having a psychotic break," Jessica said, but her voice shook. "Dad! Dad, come quick!" Richard appeared in the doorway, with Daniel right behind him. Richard looked between us, confused. Daniel's face was grim. "What's going on?" Richard demanded. I held up the insulin pen, showing him the dosage. "Your daughter just attempted to inject me with 50 units of insulin. My prescribed dose is 10. This amount would send me into hypoglycemic shock and kill me within hours." "That's insane," Jessica said, backing toward the door. "She's been declining for weeks. You've seen it, Dad. She's not thinking clearly." "Actually, I've been perfectly clear," I said. "I've been pretending to have dementia because I needed you to think I was vulnerable. I needed you to get careless. And you did." Daniel pulled out his phone, showing Richard the video footage from 20 seconds ago. Jessica forcibly grabbing my wrist, trying to inject me with the massive dose. Then the footage from 3 nights prior. Jessica checking if I was dead. Then the audio recording of her phone call with Marcus, planning my murder. Richard's face went through a series of emotions I'll never forget. Confusion, disbelief, horror, and finally, a grief so profound it seemed to age him 10 years in seconds. "Jessica," he whispered, "tell me this isn't true." Jessica's mask finally cracked. The careful, concerned daughter vanished, replaced by something cold and furious. "You don't understand. Neither of you understand what it's like to watch everyone else succeed while you're drowning. I built that company with everything I had. I mortgaged my condo. I maxed out my credit cards. And it's failing. Do you know what that feels like? To watch your dream die? So you decided to kill your mother?" Daniel's voice was ice. "For what? An inheritance you haven't even earned?" "This house alone is worth $1.8 million, Jessica shot back. "The investment accounts, the life insurance, all of it. I could pay off my debts, save my company, start over. And what about me?" I asked quietly. "What about the fact that I'm your mother? That I raised you, loved you, would have done anything for you?" Something flickered in Jessica's eyes then. Shame, maybe, or the ghost of the daughter I used to know. But it was gone in an instant. "I thought you'd be asleep when it happened," she said, and her voice sounded almost like an apology. "I thought you wouldn't suffer. That's something, isn't it?" "No," Richard said, his voice breaking. "That's not something. That's nothing." He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. Jessica tried to run. She actually tried to push past Daniel and make it to the door. But my son, who she'd always underestimated, caught her easily. He was bigger, stronger, and unlike her, he had right on his side. The police arrived within 10 minutes. I gave them everything. The video footage, the audio recordings, the insulin pen, with its lethal dose still set. The officers listened to Jessica's phone call with Marcus, her voice clearly discussing how to make my death look natural. They arrested her on the spot for attempted murder. They picked up Marcus 3 hours later. It turned out he was more than just Jessica's boyfriend. He was a disbarred attorney with a history of fraud, and together they'd planned to split my estate. He'd already drawn up a contested will, ready to file the moment I died. The trial took 9 months. Jessica's lawyer tried to argue that I'd manipulated the evidence, that my recovered mental health was suspicious. But Dr. Morrison testified that I'd never shown any signs of cognitive decline. Daniel's video footage was time-stamped and verified by forensic experts, and the insulin pen with Jessica's fingerprints and that 50-unit dose was damning. Most damning of all was Jessica's own testimony. On the stand, she tried to play the victim, the struggling business owner driven to desperation. But under cross-examination, the prosecutor asked her a simple question. If you needed money so desperately, why didn't you just ask your parents for help? They'd already lent you $40,000. Jessica's answer chilled the entire courtroom, because they would have wanted it back. This way, everything would have been mine. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts: attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison. Marcus got 15 for his role in the conspiracy. I didn't cry at the sentencing. I'd done all my crying in the months before the trial, grieving the daughter I'd lost. Or maybe grieving the daughter I'd never really had. Because looking back now, I can see the signs. The entitlement, the way she treated Daniel with contempt, the casual cruelty toward anyone she perceived as beneath her. I'd made excuses for it, called it ambition, called it confidence. I'd been so blind. Richard took it the hardest. He blamed himself for spoiling her, for not seeing who she really was. We went to counseling together, trying to rebuild our marriage in the wake of our daughter's betrayal. Some days were better than others. We sold the Cape Cod house. Too many memories haunted those rooms. We moved to Vermont, to a smaller home near Daniel and his wife. Daniel and his wife had their first child last year, a daughter they named Margaret. I hold my granddaughter and think about second chances, about the cycle of life and love and hope, about how we can't choose who our children become, but we can choose how we respond when they show us their true nature. Jessica writes to me sometimes from prison. Long letters full of apologies and explanations, trying to make me understand how desperate she was, how much pressure she felt. I read them once and then file them away. Richard asks if I'll ever forgive her, if I'll ever visit. I don't know the answer. Maybe someday. But right now, I'm focused on the family I have left. The son who stood by me, who believed me when it mattered most. The husband who's learning to trust again. The granddaughter who represents everything good that we can still build from the ashes of what we lost. People ask me sometimes if I regret the way I handled it, if I wish I'd just confronted Jessica immediately, or gone to the police the night I overheard her phone call. But I know the truth. Without evidence, without proof, it would have been my word against hers. And families choose to believe what's comfortable, what's easier. Richard might have sided with Jessica, might have convinced himself I was confused, paranoid, jealous of her success. The cameras, the recordings, the undeniable proof, that was the only way to ensure justice. I'm 66 now. 3 years have passed since that night. My diabetes is well controlled. I manage my own medications, and Richard double-checks everything, a habit born from trauma that I don't discourage. We're healing. Slowly. The way deep wounds do. With time and care, and the acceptance that some scars never fully fade. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Love isn't about obligation or inheritance or what you can gain. Real love, the kind worth having, is proven through actions. Through the son who believed his mother even when it seemed impossible. Through the husband who chose to keep loving after his world shattered. Through the granddaughter who smiles at me with pure, uncomplicated joy. I built a good life once. I built it on assumptions and hopes, and the belief that family meant safety. Now I'm building a different life, a smaller one perhaps, but truer. Built on the solid ground of knowing exactly who stands beside me, and why they choose to stay. That's worth more than any inheritance. That's worth everything.